So if you're dealing with low ferritin levels and you're eating all these high iron foods and it's just not turning the situation around for you, in this video I'm going to help you understand really common mistakes that a lot of people make. I'm going to help you understand some things that can actually block your body's ability to absorb this iron or to utilize the iron correctly. I'm also going to give you a major mechanism malfunction that I see as the most common cause for this low ferritin issue. And nobody's telling you about this. We're going to share some studies that you can go over if you need to, but I'm going to help you understand some steps you can take to turn this situation around. Because the most common symptoms that you see with this issue are like unexplained fatigue, brain fog, weakness, brittle nails and hair, mood swings, and these crazy cravings for ice. I just want to eat ice all the time. So none of these symptoms are really that fun. We really want to help you turn this situation around. So some things that we need to keep in mind when we're looking at low ferritin. Ferritin is basically like a savings account. Like the iron in your blood that your body's utilizing right there could be the cash in your wallet, but the ferritin is the savings account that keeps this iron ready to go when you need it. So when ferritin is low, you don't really have any backup reserves. And this also helps us understand, well, somebody will say, well, man, I looked at my iron numbers and my iron was okay, but the ferritin was really low. Well, you may have $50 in your wallet, but if you blow that on a pretty dress, now you don't have any backups in the savings account. So this ferritin really gives us an understanding of what's really going on in the body. We don't want to just look at the iron levels. And some things that we want to keep in mind is that iron is very important for the immune system and for the immune system to function correctly, and for the bacteria in our gut that helps that immune system function correctly, they need that iron. The problem is a lot of bad guys and bad bacteria really thrive on that iron too, and if there's access to iron for them, now they're going to cause a lot more trouble. So the body has this move called sequestration where it will kind of bind up this iron and some other minerals that help these bad guys thrive, and now you don't have access to them either, and then once the infection is gone, then the body releases that iron and we can utilize it again. But if somebody has like a chronic infection that's been there for years, it can really restrict the body's ability to access that iron. So if you're dealing with some type of chronic infection, that really needs to be handled. If somebody is losing a lot of blood from an excessive menstrual cycle, an ulcer, or some type of internal bleeding, that would need to be corrected too, because that could deplete some iron. We also want to make sure that we don't have too much iron. Too much iron can cause just as much trouble, if not more, than too little. Like I have a hereditary issue called hemochromatosis, where my body absorbs too much iron, and then that high iron level creates all kind of inflammation, and then I can't talk for 8 years. That's a different story if you haven't seen that part. But we want to have the right amount of iron, and some people absorb iron very easily, some people absorb way too much, and some people have a very difficult time absorbing iron. So we want to look at, okay, the ability for the person to absorb the iron that they're consuming, and then are there issues that are blocking that iron from coming in or being utilized correctly. So if somebody says, oh man, I'm eating all these iron-rich foods, we want to look at these dietary sources, because there's what's called heme iron, which is the type of iron you're going to find in animal meat and chicken and liver and things like that. And then there's non-heme iron that you would find in vegetables or in all these iron-rich fortified foods like, cereals and such that are fortified with iron. This is all non-heme iron. So the problem is you can't just look at the iron content of a food and think, oh, this is what I'm getting. I'm eating this, I'm getting this iron. Woo! Well, a lot of the non-heme iron foods are very difficult for us to access that iron. So we're having a big pile of spinach that has a lot of iron in it, but it's non-heme iron, and some people will only absorb like 2% of that. Some people might get up to 15%, but it's very difficult to get the iron out of these non-heme iron foods. The animal protein type sources of iron that have heme iron, you can access a lot easier. So we really want to lean towards these sources of iron when we're trying to lift the iron in the body. So if somebody's a vegan here and they're just, I'm going to have a bunch of lentils and I'm having all these non-heme iron sources, and that person has a hard time absorbing iron, well, where's the iron going to come from? It's really not going to show up. I'll go over some other things we can do with vegans, so just remind me in the comment, hey, don't forget to go over that vegan thing, and we'll come back to that. That'll work. But let's look at the body's ability to access this iron, and that's going to be a really big deal for most people because a lot of foods will contain things like phytic acid and polyphenols and tannins and fiber in these non-heme iron vegetable sources, and those have the ability to block your body's ability to access that iron. That also means you might want to Google hey, what foods have high polyphenols or tannins, like coffee and tea. If you're drinking coffee or tea or some type of liquid that has a lot of tannins in it, you're going to restrict your absorption of that iron. So that can be a real problem for some people. Now, vitamin C has the ability to help the body absorb iron. And the study that I'm going to link in the description below, they tell us that it's usually ascorbic acid vitamin C that helps us assimilate iron more. And it's telling us that it's an acidifier. In that acidic environment, that helps access the iron. So that takes us to the biggest deal, and the biggest problem for most people is a problem with stomach acid or bile flow or access to these other minerals that are needed to utilize that iron correctly. We need cofactors like magnesium, copper, and zinc. So let's understand what's going on here. When we eat food, this stomach creates hydrochloric acid that helps us acidify and break that food down. So let's look at this study here on iron deficiency anemia from iron malabsorption caused by proton pump inhibitors. And proton pump inhibitors, or PPIs, are like acid reflux medications that turn off this stomach acid. So this study says these findings suggest that proton pump inhibitors have been an under-recognized cause for iron deficiency anemia and need to be considered in patients who are taking a proton pump inhibitor. The iron deficiency does correct with intravenous iron replacement. So what they were seeing is that, oh wow, all these people on PPIs have low iron levels, but if we just stick it right into them, then that corrects that iron deficiency. So it wasn't something about that medication that was doing something to the iron. Just turning off the acid is restricting the body's ability to access the iron. So what's important for you to understand is that a person doesn't need to be taking a PPI to have low stomach acid. There's lots of things that can go wrong in the body that can restrict that stomach acid from being formed correctly. Even if a person is just stressed, that can restrict stomach acid production. So if someone is not producing enough stomach acid, they're not going to be able to break down the foods that they're eating and access the nutrients in that food. Another tricky thing is we saw that zinc is needed to access iron. Well, we need stomach acid to access zinc, and the body needs zinc to make stomach acid. So you can see how somebody can be stuck in this broken cycle of digestion for years or decades. The other thing that's important is when this acidic product leaves the stomach and comes down here into the duodenum, that triggers the gallbladder to squirt this alkaline bile down. It triggers the pancreas to squirt out this alkaline bicarb and these enzymes that help us break down our food correctly. And it's this acidic product leaving the stomach, meeting the alkaline bile and the bicarb and such, that creates this sizzle that kind of busts our food apart and helps us get the nutrients out of that food. So if either of these aspects of digestion are not working correctly, either the stomach acid is too low or bile has become too thick and sticky to flow correctly, we're not really going to get all the nutrients out of that food. And iron is one of those things that can be a little bit harder to absorb. You need more things working correctly to really access that iron. So if you're new to this channel, you don't know if those are problems for you, we'll have links in the description below for our video on 10 signs of low stomach acid and 10 signs of poor bile flow, so you can see if either of those issues are a problem for you. And we have lots of videos on how to improve those issues. We also have a totally free digestion course if you need help figuring out what things are going wrong and what steps will help you fix that. But this is really crucial. This is the biggest deal when people are having a hard time accessing iron. They're just not digesting their food correctly. It doesn't really matter if they're eating all the good sources if they can't break it down and access that iron. Now just remember, if your doctor is telling you to use a PPI, I'm not telling you not to do that. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving anybody medical advice. I'm basically a professional stand-up comic turned nutrition author. Because when I lost my voice for 8 years and 23 different doctors couldn't figure that out, I had to dig for my own answers. So now for 20 years, I've been teaching health professionals in more than 40 countries how to help their clients fix the actual underlying causes of problems instead of just covering up the symptoms. But I'll have those studies linked below so you can go through those and figure out the right questions to ask your doctor. But when we're looking at steps to correct this problem, some things that we can consider are, okay, why don't we just take some iron supplements? And the problem with just taking an iron supplement is you're not getting all those cofactors that we talked about that the body needs to really utilize that iron correctly. And a lot of the iron supplements are going to create a constipation issue for a problem because iron is what we call pro-anabolic. And if somebody is already leaning a little bit too far on that anabolic side, iron can really magnify that problem, and then that can cause the body to send too much water to the kidneys and not enough to the bowels, and now the stool gets all dry and hard and they get constipated, and why can't I poop? So iron supplements, I don't like to use those a whole lot. If I'm going to use a supplement, I like to use something that's more broad-based, like maybe even like a grass-fed liver pill. Now it's like I'm eating liver, but I'm accessing all the iron in that liver, but also other nutrients that are really needed by the body to really utilize that iron correctly. So that's one possibility. But the biggest thing is we need to fix any low stomach acid issues, and we need to fix any poor bile flow problems. There's things you can do to thin out the bile so that it will flow correctly, but if you don't have enough stomach acid, you can supplement with what's called betaine HCl capsules, and then that's like acidifying the stomach, just like your body was making its own acid. You really want to know how to do that. I'll point you to something like that in a second. But once we fix digestion, then we want to eat real food. We don't want to eat food that's fortified with iron. We want to eat real food so that we can access the iron. It's easier to absorb, and we get all the nutrients that go along with that. So I see those comments about reminding me about the vegan. I appreciate that. So if somebody's a vegan, they're going to have a harder time fixing this. It's going to be difficult if you fix digestion and you're eating more of these, spinach type of things, high in iron. You know that you'll have a better chance of getting at least some. But some people need to take other steps. Maybe you're not going to eat animal food, but maybe you could use a supplement like a liver pill kind of thing. Or if you're a vegan for religious reasons, they do have some therapeutic exemptions in some religions where the religion is saying, okay, we see this is a problem. We want you to follow the main steps, but we also want you to be a human. So we're going to give you a therapeutic exemption so that you can function. Remember, a lot of those symptoms are not fun. The person can't function, so they're giving some exemptions here. You can look into that if that's a possibility. So just remember, if it's very important for you that you stick with all vegan options, just keep in mind that it's going to take more effort for you to correct the problem, and just be willing to do the work. And that's okay. And fixing the digestive malfunctions will be absolutely crucial for you so that you can at least get some iron from these sources. So I hope that gives you some ideas about what's really creating the problem and why just eating more iron-rich food is not fixing it for you. And if you do want to test out supplementing with some HCl capsules, you really want to know how to do it the right way, or you're going to create or magnify some other symptoms. So you can jump over right now and check out our video on avoid these 9 HCl mistakes. I can't wait to hear about your results.